What up, though? Welcome back to episode 7 of IFS in Black, man. It's a pleasure and an honor to be able to introduce these two and just to welcome you all back to the channel. We thank each and every one of you for taking the time out to check out these demos and to provide your feedback in whatever form or fashion you do so. And so this week, just a little bit about the folks here. You have some people who are kind of high up in the IFS ranks, and I'm saying that mainly because you got one of the first Black assistant trainers in the larger IFS Institute, as well as someone who is doing incredible work in the psychedelic assisted therapy space, as well as within the IFS community. And so today's going to be, I think, pretty cool, mainly because, right, this session is not necessarily starting with parts arriving from like an emotional kind of state. It starts from more so a body sensation and awareness, and I think that that's going to be pretty interesting because not every session is the same. And as well, right, I think it's also important to consider the way our parts show up and communicate with us. And so I hope that this is relatable to folks, and I hope that this is something that is eye-opening in many ways as well, because it allows for people to see, right, just how unique each and every one of our systems are, and, right, the various ways in which our bodies and our parts are talking to us on a regular basis. We're past the halfway mark in the first season, and so just really glad to be able to have this many people being a volunteer and just really want to be a part of what we're doing here. So if that is you, again, you feel free to reach out via IG, via Facebook, shoot me an email, philip@theseekrproject.com, and we love to have you on as one of our guests. And so with that being said, I'm just going to jump right into the video.
So hi Nydia, how are you doing this morning, this afternoon?
I'm present. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks for asking. So I was thinking maybe today we can focus on a part that's maybe around and active, and we can kind of see what comes up for you. How does that feel?
That feels cool.
Okay, so why don't you take a minute and see if you can kind of just maybe take a couple deep breaths and see if there's a part that you can kind of find.
So I don't know that I feel a part, but I'm like, my waist beads feel tight.
Your waist beads feel tight. Okay, is that where the part is present, maybe?
I mean, this is the closest thing that where my attention is. So I like took a deep breath and I was like, but like
yeah, just notice that.
Yeah,
okay.
I feel like this, in addition to the tight waist beads, I do feel like this in the pit of my stomach.
So you feel like a sensation, a feeling that's coming up around that area.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, how would it feel to maybe just focus on it a little bit more? It sounds like it came up very present by just bringing the awareness of the tightness of your waist bead. So maybe if you just focus on it for a little bit, what comes up for you?
So the feeling is not different. It's just these waist beads are tight. So side note, before this session, I had Chick-fil-A, and I've been eating clean for the most part, but I was on a time crunch and stopped there because all of the options that I would have wanted to go to were either too far off or time-wise, it just wasn't going to work. And it really bothered me that like I had to. It was either that or don't eat. And I'm not nice when I don't eat within like a specific time frame. But what it makes me think about is like just food deserts and not having access to food that I actually want to eat that fits into like my schedule. So that's kind of like the extended story that comes up when I think about like, well, why are your waist beads tight? That's the short answer for right now. Why?
Yeah, so that's good. So the part's kind of giving you some information
Hmm. Yeah.
about why this area in your body might be feeling this way at this time.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And the idea of like food deserts and kind of what that symbolizes for you.
Yeah.
Mhm. Anything more actually? Well, actually, before we get there, because this is going to be good as we continue to kind of work with this part. Um, how how's that kind of feeling? How are you feeling about the information kind of now that the part's kind of really starting to open up?
Um, it's not new information. Like my relationship with food has been like a on and off again thing. I've always been funny about textures. I've always like read labels. My dad is like a health nut. I remember growing up, he used to say like, if you can't pronounce it, you shouldn't be eating it. Um, that's real. It's something to just be present with. So I've always been mindful of food. Um, Sometimes more than others. And in the times where I'm like very present, I don't like when I have to. It's different if I was craving Chick-fil-A and then wanted to go there and went. But I don't like when it's the last resort and it's either whatever the option is or not eat. Because what I'm wanting to actually eat is like nowhere near where I am. And that's the case a lot. So if I'm not planning to have like
Mhm,
fruits and veggies nearby, which meal prepping is a thing within itself. It's like you go without, and I hate that.
mhm. Okay. Okay. So now it seems like this part is really, really explaining to you the idea of food, the idea of choice.
Mm,
And then if we go back to just how the sensation showed up for you, right?
yeah.
So it's like multiple, it's like
Mhm.
showing you kind of like, this is my experience, and this experience comes out of location. Like you
Yeah.
said, either you eat Chick-fil-A or you starve, right? So there's limited choice in that. Also, the choice that you have based off
Mhm.
of what you prefer to kind of put in your body. So that's great information. So if we kind of stay here for a little bit, is it okay? You already feel a certain way towards this part, or maybe I could just check in again. How are you feeling towards this part at this moment?
Um, that's a good question. I don't know. It's not that I don't know. I'm present with it. Um, it's a familiar feeling. I'm not. I don't feel a way towards it. I'm just kind of neutral. I was gonna say numb, but it's like no, it's not numbness. It's just I'm indifferent. It's like okay, I see it, I hear it, feel it. Um, don't really know what to do with it yet. It's just kind of there.
Okay, so you feel indifferent. I'm wondering if you can send some compassion or some curiosity towards the part as it's giving you a lot of information and see how that lands.
Like all of this from tight waist beads.
Is that what the part said?
Yeah. All of
Mm-hmm.
this from tight waist beads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of information that we hold in our bodies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did that land? And in that part, some curiosity and some compassion.
I would say just laughter.
Laugh, so sense of
Yeah, just
humor kind of
giggles.
came in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So how are you feeling for us to kind of continue?
Yeah, we can keep going.
Okay. So let's kind of move through. Let's try to gain some more information. So the part so far has given us a lot of background information about why it
Mm,
feels, um, how it feels about food choice, about food
mm,
desert. Can the part maybe give us some more information about it itself? Um, Maybe like, does it have an age? Does it have a
mm.
experience that it remembers? Does it have a color? Does it have like anything that it can kind of identify itself a little bit more as we get to know it?
So when you said age, like instantly what came up is like why choice matters to me so much. So when I was little, like I shared before, my dad was like a health nut, very conscious. And when we were younger, we weren't allowed to go like to Burger King or McDonald's. His thing was that's not real food, eat at home. So my mom, who didn't, she didn't really follow his way of looking at food. It was just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna just take the kids to McDonald's and Burger King. So like in the times where we would go, because it was like few far and in between, we were told not to tell him. So it was like a secret. And when she would cook at home, I didn't always like the food, but it was one of these things where it's like you're gonna cook whatever I eat. And if you don't finish it, you're not gonna get up from the table. So I just wouldn't get up from the table. It would be dinner was like what, 5, 6? It's 8 o'clock, 8:30, 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I'm still sitting there. And when my dad would come home, it's like, well, why are you still sitting there? It's like, well, she said I couldn't get up, so I finished the plate. It's like, go to your room. So he was like my savior in a lot of ways. Um, and I just remember when I was younger feeling like when I have my own money, I'm gonna buy whatever it is that I'm wanting to eat. So like this frustration is also towards myself because had I prepared to have the foods that I'm wanting to eat during lunchtime, I wouldn't even have to bother to go to Chick-fil-A. Time has just been limited because I've been traveling so much. So like it's wasteful to buy all this food that I'm not ever really home for, and then I'm coming home to throw out food. So it's like it gets tricky when I go food shopping because depending on where I am any given week, I'm either having to buy just enough, sometimes I eat that quickly and then having to go back, or not buying at all because I'm going to be gone too long to then come back and throw out food. Another thing that I'm mindful of is that the foods that I eat are fresh. They're not going to last me 3, 4 weeks if I just keep it in the freezer. It's like buy it and you have a few days to eat it. So I'm trying to find, or even as I'm saying this out loud, like I'm just trying to think of what are easier ways to eat good food that are convenient for the time that I have. Because Chick-fil-A is not it. I'm not liking this type feeling. I don't feel like this after I eat on the regular basis. And I think this is why I notice it so much because I don't normally feel like this.
That's very helpful. I'm curious if there's a part that came in that kind of wants a solution to what you're experiencing.
Oh
Okay.
yeah. Well,
Okay.
had you went food shopping and did,
Mhm.
what you were supposed to, this wouldn't even be a thing. And
Mhm.
it's like a part of me agrees because I've been doing really well. I go to the farmers market, well, when I'm in town on Sundays. I buy what I need for the week and then I substitute the things or the things I won't make and then I will purchase that. But I don't have anything. Like my fridge, what's in it?
Doesn't sound like anything's in it at this point.
When I get home, I'm gonna send you a picture. I don't know what's in it. Not much. Let me just say that.
And that's okay. So there's a couple parts that are coming in, right? So we were
Yeah.
focusing on, if we can kind of just slow the process down, we were focusing on this part that showed up around your stomach area and the tight beads, and then the idea of like food deserts came up, and then the idea of like choice came up, and then you were really able to kind of focus on it, right? So this
Mhm.
idea of not having choice as a child. And how old would you say those experiences happen, like around what time frame?
Um, like 7, 8.
Okay.
Yeah. This part is really young. Really young.
Okay. So between 7 and 8, you could remember experiences where you would be sitting down at the dinner table, your mom cooked a
Yeah.
meal, and if you didn't eat it, then that you weren't gonna eat for the evening for that day.
I wasn't gonna get up from the table.
You
Like
weren't gonna get up from the table.
it was like a you can leave when that food is done, when it's
Hmm.
cleared out.
And so this part would really struggle with eating the food and not having a choice of something else.
Yeah.
Okay. So this part is, it doesn't make sense, kind of like why the food deserts and the lack of like choice, right? Like that's happening in your
Yeah.
experience now, right? Either you eat the Chick-fil-A or you starve,
Right.
right? And then this protector came in, which I appreciate the protector being able to soften a little bit, but the protector wants to go into solution around meal planning. And I hear that
Mhm.
protector as well. But if we can maybe spend a little bit more time on this part, this young part who's like 7, 8 years old, who didn't have choice, felt like at that moment she didn't have choice as far as, getting
Mhm.
up from the dinner table. I'm also curious if there's anything else that this 7, 8 year old self wants us to know.
As I'm hearing you use the word starve, some discomfort comes up for me. Um, and it's like there's a part that's like, that's not what she was doing. Like my mom wasn't trying to starve me. She was being efficient. It's just like, you have different kids. It makes sense that you would cook one thing and the hope is that everybody eats it. So like starve feels harsh, but then let me rewind back because I was having a conversation with a friend about this very, very particular thing. And I remember they said to me, I'm going to use this lightly, but abuse. And I was like, what do you mean? And I sat with them and I was like, yeah, it is abusive to force feed something that you don't want to eat. Although it's not um, harsh or like forceful in the moment, it's like a subtle forceful where, like, well, you either eat this or you don't. And if you don't, then it's like there's no choice in that. So I'm sitting with the discomfort of like the word starve in the context of like what we're talking about and really framing it as abuse or receiving it as abuse because that's what it felt like back then. It's like, well, why can't she just make something else? I'm not, it's not that I don't want to eat. I just don't want to eat that.
Yeah, that's so insightful. Thank you for your system and your parts, because it makes me think culturally, right? Like in a lot of families of culture,
Yeah.
this happens, right? Like eat what's on the rest of your plate. Like, and so how does culture also play into this behavior of finish what's on your plate and the burdens that come from those behaviors? And I also appreciate and want to thank you and apologize to that part if they felt like my word choice was also like a little hard to receive or hear,
Mhm.
because I think that's important too when doing this work, that I use your wording and not put my wording in.
Mhm.
And so just that clarity is also helpful. um yeah. So how does, now that you kind of expressed all of that, how does that kind of feel for your system?
The adult me is just like, I'll do better with meal planning. Um, Chick-fil-A was like what, once this whole month. It's not the end of the world. The frustrated part of me is just like, well, what do I do with all of this? Like, I have this conscious awareness and understanding of what led me up until this point. Um, And, I can't go back and change it. It just kind of is what it was.
Yeah, and how about your comfort level as far as like what you just shared around kind of like the eating experience that your 7 or 8-year-old had, and how the experience unfolded the way that it did, and now today as an adult, how you can kind of see the perspective.
Um, it just kind of is what it is. I feel like that's
Mhm.
where I am with it. Like, it's helpful to understand feelings and, have language for them and be able to articulate those feelings and share it with other people. So, like, in that sense, I have substance and meaning of why I feel the way that I do. And then there's like
Mhm.
this feeling of like, well, now what?
Mhm.
And I think that was that protector that was coming in earlier. We're like, well, what are the solutions to this? Because you can't just
Right.
sit with the sulking of, oh, I didn't get to eat what I actually wanted.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm also curious if, before we have a couple more minutes, if
Mhm.
the adult you would be willing to maybe talk a little bit to the 7 or 8-year-old Nydia who had those experiences for a minute, maybe see if you can
Mhm.
kind of, if the part senses you, if they're willing to kind of let you into the
Mhm.
scene
So
or their
my thought
experience.
was, I'm gonna go to the farmers market.
Okay, Nydia, thank you so much for, that information that you've been giving me about your part. So you went back
Mhm.
into to talk to this part, and the first thing it said was, I want to go to the farmers market. Or was that you saying you want to go to
That
the
was
farmers market?
me. Yeah, my present
Okay.
self to my younger self. Like, yeah, I'm gonna go to the farmers market today after work.
Maybe can you bring that part with you? Or
Oh yeah,
what would that part want? Maybe let me ask, what does that part feel like it wants or needs from you?
fruits, veggies, foods that feel light, foods that are like easy to eat and are tasty and that are like good for my body, where like my waist beads don't feel tight. Give me one moment. Um, yeah, so we were talking about the farmers market. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, foods that are easy to eat, foods that are light, foods that are good for my body, and like foods that don't make my waist beads feel tight.
Okay. Okay.
That's kind of like what's coming up for me, or the younger part is communicating.
Okay, that's great. And so do you think that maybe you can stick to this plan with this part, because the part has given us a lot of information,
Hmm.
um, and also about what the part needs. And so maybe if you can
Yeah.
spend some time, go to the farmer's market, and then just check in with the part too after that experience.
Hmm. Yeah.
How does that feel?
It feels, yeah, it's landing well.
Okay. Is there anything else before we close out?
Mm, no, this feels complete for today.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you, Nydia, to you and your parts, and just being
Thank
willing
you.
to do this demonstration with me today. Um, and anything else you want to say before? Okay.
No, thank you for making time. And I didn't think that I was going to talk about this, but I think this is like the beauty of it all. Be present with what comes up and go with that.
Okay. Very good. All right. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.